My reign as a Jeopardy champion lasted almost 35 minutes.
This was coming, like the waiting room of the vasectomist, and I know that's not what he's called. I know there's like a fancy word, but...
If you leave, I have nothing left to live for.
So I've always loved the University of North Carolina. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, and my dad did both his undergraduate and his dental school at the University of North Carolina. And together we would watch basketball games. We'd watch basketball games together when I was little. And when we'd watch, I had this hat that I would wear. And I still have the hat today. And on the inside of the hat, my name's written in there. But it's not written in my handwriting, it's written in my dad's, because I wasn't old enough yet to write my own name. And we would watch all these games together, and I loved North Carolina. But my love for the University of North Carolina went even beyond the basketball court. To me, the University of North Carolina was that shining example of what a university should be. It was this public university. It was filled with North Carolinians. It was dedicated to affordability and diversity. We had a legendary men's basketball coach, a coach that I just idolized, who loved people just as much as he loved basketball. And he was the coach that invented the idea that when you get an assist from a teammate, you point to your teammate. He was the guy that invented the idea that when a man gets substituted out of a game, everyone on the bench will stand for his teammate. He was the guy that invented that on the last home game of a year, every senior will start that game. Every senior will start regardless of how good they were or if they'd ever really started before. And so I love the University of North Carolina. I was a huge fan. And along with that love came a deep and healthy hatred of Duke University. And to me, the University of North Carolina was this public institution. It was filled with North Carolinians, and it had this legendary coach who loved people just as much as he loved basketball. And Duke was not that. I don't want to use the word antithesis, but that's kind of what it was. And so I loved North Carolina, and I hated Duke, and I always knew that I was going to play at North Carolina. Growing up, I had this Space Jam hoop, and on the one side of the Space Jam hoop was Bugs Bunny, and on the other side was Michael Jordan. I used to just dunk all over that Space Jam hoop. And having seen Space Jam, I knew that Michael Jordan was the best player in the galaxy, and that he could vanquish invading space aliens with his basketball prowess. I also knew that Michael Jordan had gone to North Carolina, and therefore could vanquish Duke with his basketball prowess. In my mind, drawing a clear parallel between invading space aliens and Duke University. And so I was going to go off, and I was going to play at North Carolina, and that was my dream. However, as I got older, that dream slowly died. And it didn't die because I ever stopped loving the University of North Carolina or its men's basketball program, but because I realized I don't jump very high. And I wasn't very tall either, which are two things that are just quintessential to being a basketball player, and I didn't have them. And I was also a very good soccer player. And so I was good at soccer, and that was what I was going to do. And as I got older, that sort of replaced my dream of playing basketball. And I dreamed that I was gonna play soccer in college. And when I reached the point of deciding where I was gonna go, I indeed did have offers to play soccer in college. However, that all changed when I got home from school one day and I checked my email, and I saw that I'd received an offer of a Morehead Cain scholarship to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Now, I don't know if you guys know what the Morehead Cain scholarship is, but it's this unbelievable opportunity. Unbelievable. It's got full scholarship, all these summer opportunities. It's the kind of thing that you would be nuts to turn down. You'd be crazy. And when I got it, I was so excited, and I ran up to my room, and I went upstairs and I grabbed one of my North Carolina t-shirts, and I put on the basketball shorts that I'd gotten from basketball camp when I was 12, and I pulled out the hat that had my name on the inside that my dad had written in there. And I put it all on, and I ran downstairs, and I grabbed one of my dad's Carolina alumni reviews, and I opened it, and I started flipping through the pages. And my dad, a couple minutes later, got home from work, and he knew that that was the day that the Morehead Kane announcement had come out. And he walked into the room, and he saw me sitting on the couch wearing all my Carolina stuff. And he goes, "No way!" And I was like, "Yes way!" And he was like, "No way!" And I was like, "Yes way!" And then we did the father-son fist bump, yeah! And I was so hyped. And then I was so excited, and then I went up to my room, and I laid on my bed, and I cried. And I cried not because I wasn't excited about my new opportunities, but because I wasn't good enough to play soccer at North Carolina. And I realized that my athletic career was over, that I wasn't going to be a collegiate athlete anymore. And to me, that was very difficult because athletics had played such a huge part of my identity. It played a huge part of who I was. And I really struggled with that. I struggled with it up until the point that I got an email from my dad. I was at UNC at the time, and it was an email containing an article about the JV basketball team. And it had a link, and it included the tryout dates. And for those of you who are going, "I don't know what a JV basketball team is," I'll explain. So back prior to the 1970s, freshmen were not eligible to play Division I athletics. And so every program had a varsity team and then a freshman team comprised of the freshmen, as well as all the students who had just gone to the university and tried out. And in the 1970s, freshmen then became eligible to play Division I athletics. And essentially, every institution in the country abolished their JV programs, or their freshman programs. All of them, with the notable exception of the University of North Carolina. Because Dean Smith loved the idea that anyone could come to the University of North Carolina, and if they really, really wanted, play for the varsity basketball team. And so he used it to draw his walk-ons. And so I was like, this is cool, I'm gonna go check it out. And I remember I walked into the Smith Center for tryouts for the first time. And I walked in, and I was like, whoa. And I looked around, and I saw Michael Jordan's jersey hanging right above me. And I was like, this is where Michael Jordan vanquished the space aliens. I mean, Duke, the Duke. Quick side note, Michael Jordan vanquished Duke in Carmichael, and at the time, NC State was the big rival. But the point is, it was really cool. And so I tried out, and I made the team, and I worked really hard. And then after the team, I met with the coach at the time, Coach Jared Haas. Remember the name, Jared Haas. And Coach Haas said, Sasha, you're big enough. I mean, by this point, I'd hit a growth spurt. You're big enough, you're athletic enough, your grades are good enough, you work hard enough. If you really want, you can earn a spot on the men's basketball team. And I walked out of that room, and I did not have a goal that I wanted more, or anything that I wanted more than to make that varsity basketball team. So the next year I worked really, really hard, and I had a really good sophomore season, much, much better than my JV season. I went from averaging 9 points to 20, and I had a really great season. I worked really hard. And then you play 2 years on the JV team, and then you get tried for the varsity team. And so the next year, I worked really hard again all through that summer. And then before tryouts, that my junior year, Coach Davis came up to all the guys who had played 2 years of JV and were trying out for varsity, and he said, guys, I know you've worked really hard. I appreciate all the things that you do. We're not gonna have any spots open on the varsity team this year. I'm sorry. And I said, Coach, what about next year? I'm a junior, I can try it again next year. And he said, Sasha, I don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know. And that next year was, again, really tough because it's one thing to work hard. It's another thing to work hard with no coach. It's another thing to work hard with no coach and without even the possibility, without even the guarantee that even if you do work hard, you'll be able to show it off. And so I had a lot of difficulty. I interned for a consulting firm that summer, and I was working crazy hours, and I'd have to wake up 5 a.m. to get in the time that I wanted to play basketball, but I did it anyway because I just loved North Carolina. And you can imagine how excited I was when I got the call, this time from C.B. McGrath, Coach McGrath, that me and 3 other guys had been invited to come try out for the men's basketball team. This was in August. And we came and we tried out, went through preconditioning workouts and all this stuff. And I remember the day in October. It was after practice, and Coach Coach called aside the two guys who weren't Justin Coleman and I, J. Cole and I, and he called them aside, and he said, everybody else go to the locker room. And as we're jogging in, I look at J. Cole and he looks at me, and we're thinking the exact same thing. We just got cut. And I'm looking at him, and then I can't because he's starting to cry, and so I look down, and I'm looking down at the floor, and I'm like, I'm not gonna cry right now. And I knew I was gonna cry, but I was like, I'm gonna wait until I'm out of this building to cry. I'm not gonna let these people see me cry. And I was just thinking that over and over and over again in my mind, until Coach Williams walked in, and he goes, guys, please welcome to our team our two newest members, Sasha and Justin. And, not yet. Not yet. And I was very calm. I said, thank you, Coach. And then I walked outside of the building, and I looked around, and I realized I was still kind of close to the building, so I walked a little bit away. And I made sure nobody was in sight. And I was like, And then now you can clap. And then I called up my dad, and I was like, Dad, we did it. I'm going to play basketball for North Carolina. And then I said, Dad, and I checked the schedule already. Senior night's against Duke. I'm going to play against Duke. My varsity basketball career lasted 6 games. In the 6th game, we were playing against the University of Alabama at Birmingham, coached by Jared Hass, the same guy who selected me to be a part of the Carolina basketball program and told me that I could be a member of the varsity team for the first time. And I got in the game. There were about 2 minutes left, and I got in, and I was in for about 30 seconds when I got the ball at the top of the key, and Jackson came up and he set a screen for me, and I drove right, and I jump stopped. Now, if you've ever played basketball, you jump stop every single time. I've done it thousands of times. Except when this time, when I jump stopped, I felt my knee give out from underneath me. And I fell to the ground, and I screamed. The next day, I got an MRI, and when I got the MRI results back, they said, Sasha, you've torn your ACL, you're going to need surgery, and you won't play basketball again for at least another 6 months. And what I heard was, Sasha, your varsity basketball career is over. You're never going to play against Duke. And now that sounds really sad, but I don't want you to think of my story as a sad one, because it isn't. My journey onto the men's basketball team was that. It was a journey. And I learned so many things along the way. First, I learned how to work really hard. I learned how to work without a coach and without even the guarantee that I would have an opportunity to show it off, which I think is very rare and very valuable. Second, I learned all about the values that North Carolina basketball teaches. And now some of you at this point may be thinking, values? Don't you know there's a scandal? Haven't you heard the Weinstein report? And trust me, I have. And you can't imagine how much it hurts me to have read that report and see the kind of things that went on at a university that I love so very much. But at the same time, I read that report, and I can tell you that my coach didn't do anything wrong, and I firmly believe that the kind of values that Coach Williams teaches today are the exact same ones that Coach Smith taught many years ago. And finally, and most importantly, my journey onto the men's basketball team allowed me to fulfill a dream that I've had since I was 4 years old, and dunking on my Space Jam hoop and watching the games with my dad with my hat that has my name written on the inside of it. Because in 5, 10, 15, 50 years, I don't know where I'll be or what I'll be doing, but after this season, I'll always be a part of the Carolina basketball family. And for that, I'm so very thankful. Thank you.
Sasha Seymore.